Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel, Marie. Today I'll be doing my November wrap up. So once again, please excuse how messy my room is because I have officially started packing. So November honestly was not a great month for me. I don't think it was as bad as October. I don't remember how many books I read for October necessarily, but I read a total of 9 books, and out of those 9 books I gave 3 stars, 2 3.5 stars, 2 4 stars, and then 2 5-star reads. So it was like, I definitely didn't give anything below a 3-star, so it was not bad in terms of the quality, but I also didn't read a ton of like 5-star reads either. So I feel like it was just a very mediocre, 3-star kind of month for me. And once again, I do not have notes for this. I've just been busy packing and everything right now, so it's been a bit chaotic in my life right now. So I'm just going to be a little bit rambly, I feel like, because I don't have any notes. But the first book that I want to discuss is Empire of Gold by S.K. Chakabori. This book I gave 5 stars. It was an absolutely beautiful book. I did talk about this book a lot more in detail in my Goodreads fantasy vlog, so I'll link that somewhere above and down below if you want to check that out. But this was absolutely breathtaking. This is the 3rd and final book to the David Bott trilogy, which just follows Nari and Dara and Ali and just their adventures and how they're just, retaking David Bott. And that's all I can really go into it without spoiling the first 2 books. But it is a book full of lush fantasy. It's very rich, very detailed. I love the jinns, I love the devas in here. I love all the dynamics and relationships that were portrayed between the devas and jinns, between the devas and the Shafits, between the jinns and Shafits, and just all those, intermingling relationships that they have there with all the different tribes and the different groups in that society. And it was just a really beautiful book. I do think that out of the 3 books, this last one's actually my favorite. There's just something about this conclusion and how everything just wraps up. It's just beautiful. Like, it was a masterpiece, and when I finished it, I was just like, wow. Like, I just like sat there to kind of like digest everything I read, and I feel like that doesn't happen to me very often. I always feel like I'm always like done reading and I'm like, okay, I'm on to the next book. But this one I like literally had to sit down and be like, that was a moment. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I highly recommend this series if you have not picked up already. Then this next book I picked up is The Invisible Life of Addy LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This book I gave 4 stars. I also talked about this book a little bit more in detail in my Goodreads fantasy vlog, so I'll link it out again somewhere above and down below in case you want to check that out. But I talked about this book and Empire of Gold in the same video. But this book I also really enjoyed. So this book basically follows a girl. Her name is Addy LaRue, where she was born in a village in France in the 1600s, and she is just, she wants to have her freedom. She wants to live her life, but once she reached a certain age, she is now forced into marriage, and the day of her wedding, she is like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to have this, I want to have my freedom. So she ends up escaping her wedding, and she ends up going to the river and basically begging to any god that can respond to her that she just wants her freedom, and she ends up getting her wishes granted to her. Unfortunately though, her wish gets, it's a little bit skewed, ends up becoming a curse, because now she is immortal. She is free to roam the world as much as she pleases and do whatever she wants. The thing is, no one remembers her. So that is the catch-22 to her wish, and she's like, you know what, I'm just gonna live my life. And honestly, like, this book was, I like the premise of the story, I like the writing, I even like the characters, but I don't like the main character. And this is why. I feel like she is very conflicting. I just feel like she doesn't really know what she wanted to do. Her main purpose of this whole bargain with the god is the fact that she wanted to have her freedom and wanted to live her life and see the world. That's literally what she wanted to do. But she spent over 100 years literally just staying in Paris. Like, there's a few times when she went back to her old village to see kind of like how her family was doing, like after many years. Like, I think she saw her mother once. She saw like the children of her like best friends once, as they were growing up or whatever. And she's just like still living her life. No one remembers her. But I'm just like, for you to live over 100 years, aren't you tired of Paris? Like, I don't know, I just feel like Paris is like a great city, and I've been there before. It's huge, lots to explore, but 100 years though, like, I don't know. I just feel like for someone whose wish is to, see the world and be free, it didn't, I just feel like it's super weird for me how she didn't even consider traveling outside of France. And she even said that, she's like, wow, I never considered like traveling outside of France. I don't know, dude, you have like 100 years like of life like that you've lived already. Like, what have you been doing except living in Paris? Like, I don't know. And like, so that's the part that I just feel like is very conflicting with the main character. Like, her bargain and her actual, like, what she did with her life just didn't really seem to mesh. And even the god was like, so you are just fine just staying here? Like he also was confused too, and like he questioned her about like what she was doing. So I just feel like this girl was just like, she didn't know what she wanted. She clearly didn't know what she wanted when she asked for her, you know, her wish. But yeah, I just felt like, I don't know about that. But the thing is that I did like Henry, who is the bookseller who ends up remembering her. And that's the whole point of the story, how like she goes to a bookstore and, you know, she finally meets someone there, Henry, who ends up remembering who she is. So now she's wondering like why he remembers her. I actually really liked Henry. He was very endearing, he was very adorable. I really liked his backstory because like it made the ending like so bittersweet. But like I was just rooting for it like the entire way. So overall though, like I still really enjoyed it. I think this book is very solid. I just think that the main character definitely needed some like, she needed a little bit more personality, I guess, like, or just like understanding of like, you know, herself, because she clearly had over 100 years and I don't think she really got it. So then this next book that I picked up is The Once and Future Witches, which I gave 3 stars. This book I also talked about a little bit more in my Goodreads vlog, so again with the other 2 books there, I talked about all the same video, so I'll link it above and down below in case you want to check that out. But this book was disappointing. I had a really high expectations going into it because I really enjoyed 10,000 Doors of January. I gave that book like almost 5 stars, I think. It was a really pretty book, and this book was just like not what I expected. So this basically follows 3 sisters who are witches. Something happened to them when they were like younger and now they're estranged. They haven't spoken to each other for many years, but something happens one day where they're now, you know, in the same town and end up forming some sort of society where they can, you know, take back magic and basically take back women's rights, which is fine in theory. But I just felt like for a book that I'm honestly, I did not read the premise of this book, and I think that's probably my fault here, but I went into it thinking it was going to be, you know, like a whimsical, fantasy, magical, witches kind of book, you know, because that's kind of what 10,000 Doors of January is about. It's whimsical, it's lyrical, it's very like pretty, it's like fantasy. This book was like, there's fantasy, there's magic, there's witches, but it was not whimsical. It was very like, it's very parallel to the real world with like women's rights and how men just seem to have like all the authority and stuff like that. And I felt like I just didn't really go into it expecting like this heavy message, or like how the fact that it's so parallel to the real world. Like, I went to this book trying to escape the real world. I did not read this book to be reminded of the real world, you know what I mean? Like, that's the part that I was like very disappointed by, because I just didn't expect that. And I also listened to it on audiobooks. I don't know if the narrator did something as well, but I felt like it was a chore to get through this book. Like, I was so determined to really enjoy it and to finish it because of the fact that I love 10,000 Doors of January. So I think I would have been happier if I had just been like, I'm DNFing this book early in advance, because it was just not great, unfortunately. But I still gave this book 3 stars because that epilogue was chef's kiss. It was just amazing. It was powerful, it was strong. I really enjoyed, like, that was what I expected throughout this entire book, but I only got that in the epilogue, so you know. Okay, then this next book that I picked up is The House on the Cerulean Sea, which I gave 5 stars. I do have this book somewhere. I ended up packing it already, so I don't have it to show on hand, but I love this book. So this book I also talked about in my Goodreads vlog. Clearly, as you can tell, I was like, you know, going through these books very quickly for this month, for that video actually. But this book basically follows a guy called Linus, who is actually a caseworker for, I think it was like Department of like Magical like people or something like that, where his job is to go into these orphanages to kind of see how it's run, see if it's managed correctly by the master, see how the children are doing. And he writes these very methodical, very accurate reports, and he always lives life kind of as a loner. He doesn't really have a lot of friends. He goes to work, he goes home, hangs out with his cat, and like that's it. One day he ends up getting a notice that he has now been summoned by the people above, and so he's like, what's happening? Like, did I mess up? Like, what's going on? So he ends up going there, and it turns out they're sending him on a secret mission where he has to go to this faraway island basically an isolated island in the Cerulean Sea where he needs to check up on this orphanage that is very special, because apparently the 6 children that are there are incredibly special. So he goes there not even knowing like, you know, what these children are, because they're all magical. Like all these children are magical, by the way. Like everyone that he works for, they're magical, hence his department's like magical people or something. So he goes there and he's wondering like what's happening, like why is this place so secretive? And his job is basically just write these very accurate, methodical reports. So he goes there, doesn't even know what to expect until he gets there, and he finally opens the case files and he finds out what these children are. And he immediately is freaking out internally because he's like, oh my god, they are super dangerous. What am I doing here? So he goes in with all of these expectations ready, all of these assumptions about the kids, and as he stays there, because he's forced to stay there for an entire month, he learns that what he initially perceived might not be accurate, and he learns to learn more about himself as a person. He learns to understand the world more. He learns to actually connect with these children, and there's just so much beauty to this book, and it is so incredibly emotional. It is so incredibly like beautiful, and like I love the relationships that he developed. I loved the friendships that he developed. I loved all the dynamics between the children. I love just their interactions with each other. Like as the story progresses, I love his character growth from his, you know, very kind of like mundane kind of life in the beginning to a life that seems very fulfilled at the end. There's just so much about this book that was just incredible. It was a very powerful read, and at the end I was like, holy shit, I can see why so many people love this book, because this book is just so endearing. It's just everything. So highly recommend this book if you have not picked it up already. Then the next book that I picked up is The Infinity Quartz, which I gave 3 stars. This book was okay. This book basically follows a girl called Nami who ends up going to some sort of party with her friends, but before she can actually get there, she ends up in a situation where there's a robbery gone wrong and she ends up getting killed on the spot. She wakes up in the afterlife where things are a bit different. She's not sure what to expect, and suddenly she is saved or captured or kidnapped potentially by a group of individuals who claim that this afterlife is now being run by a queen, and her name is Ophelia, who happens to be the AI in the real world. So now she's trying to figure out what exactly is going on. Why is this AI ruling over the, you know, this afterlife? Why are these rebels trying to, what are they trying to do? Like, what's their purpose? She's trying to like just figure out like how this afterlife works and everything. And she also finds out that there is a lot more to Ophelia and what her plans are for humans in this world. I liked the premise of this book. I liked the sci-fi aspect of it. I thought it was a really cool plot. My biggest issue was actually the main character. I found her to be incredibly whiny and kind of annoying, actually. Like the whole time she was there, when she like stumbles upon the afterlife, is the fact that like, I get, you know, you can have a different opinion, you can, you know, think different thoughts, like, and not necessarily wrong or anything like that, but my issue was the way how she portrayed it. So she just came to this afterlife, right? And somehow she finds herself with a bunch of rebels who have been there for years and years, decades, who clearly know how this afterlife works, because also time does not work the same as real life. So they've been there for a while. But she goes in there and she immediately starts questioning a lot of things that they already know because of first-hand experience. And the way how she questions it, I'm just like, girl, they clearly know like what they're doing, you know? Like, I don't know, I just felt like there's just so many things that she kept saying and doing in the beginning, like first half of the book, that just really frustrated me, because I was just like I understand like why you're curious, like you have all these like questions and everything, but the way how you're going about it, it just rubbing me the wrong way, and I was not here for that. I also felt like the author really never explained in terms of like why Nami is the way she is, in terms of like her abilities. So the thing about the afterlife is that people do have abilities, and things work a little differently because it is the afterlife, and you're already dead. So there's things are a little bit different there, and I felt like the author just never really explained why Nami's abilities were different. So I'm not going to go into obviously spoilers, but it felt like as a book and as a reader, like the fact that you never explained it is just kind of like very frustrating as a reader, because I'm just still wondering like, why is she like this? What's the backstory? Is there a backstory? Like, are you just giving her this ability just for the plot itself? Because that makes no sense. Like, you need to like give us something, you know? So I don't know if the sequel will explain all of that, but as of right now though, I am very frustrated with like how this book ended. I mean, there's a huge cliffhanger, by the way. The ending was like definitely caught me off guard, did not expect it at all. But the character herself and how the author just never really explained like certain like key components to the plot just really aggravates me, that I don't know if I'm going to continue on the story, because it was not like the greatest. So I don't know, like I'm very conflicted right now. But yeah, that's what I'm saying for this book. Then this next book that I picked up is Winterwood, which I gave 3.5 stars. I have officially decided that I don't think this author is the author for me, because this is the second book I read by Sherry Earnshaw, and I don't think I really loved it. Like, it's not a bad book per se, I just never felt like really attached to the characters or the plot. Like, I read it kind of like you know, through a lens basically, where I was like, oh, this is like out of body experience kind of situation. So this book basically follows a girl called Nora, who is part of the Walker family, where that means that her family, it comes from a very long line of like witches. So she lives pretty isolated up in the mountains, the forest somewhere, and nearby there is this camp of like unruly boys where they basically go there as like a last effort. Otherwise they're sent to like juvenile detention centers, stuff like that. Basically they're like last ditch for the parents, like the families, to, you know, steer their boys to a better path essentially. And one day something happens where one of the boys goes missing and one of them ends up dead. And so she ends up, you know, going to the forest one day and she finds, you know, one of the boy who has been missing. She's like, are you this person? And the person's like, yeah. Like, the guy is like, yeah, like that's me. And so she brings him back, and as like the story progresses, she finds out more about this mysterious boy and why he is somehow like saved, even though he's been missing for, I want to say like 2 weeks or something like that, and he clearly should have been dead, but somehow she found him alive. There's also a lot of things about the forest itself that was uncovered. So I don't know, I think that this book, this author really, I do have her adult fantasy like somewhere over here that I think I might check out because I already have it, but I don't think any future books by this author I will actually pick up anymore, because I don't think this author's for me. So let me know below like what do you guys thought about this book, because I am super curious. The next book that I picked up is Falling in Love Montage, which I gave 3.5 stars. This was another like decent book, just okay, wasn't nothing special about it. I did give it 3.5 stars because I feel like I did like some of the elements. So this book basically follows a girl called Cersei who really doesn't believe in true love or happy endings, and her mother is currently in a care home suffering from onset early dementia. And so she knows that this illness basically will be upon her, like she has a chance of getting it because it's genetics. And so she doesn't really want to, you know, believe in happily ever after. She doesn't believe in like long-term relationships. She doesn't do relationships until one day she meets a girl called Ruby who is there for the summer. And at first they were like, you know what, let's have a relationship but no strings attached. We're not looking for something long-term, we're just looking for something fun and just for the summer, until they end up falling in love. So this book was cute in its core. I really liked the relationship between Cersei and Ruby. I thought their dynamics were really adorable, which is why I gave it 3.5 stars. But I don't know, I just feel like at the end of the day, like I still didn't feel like super connected with the characters. Like I realized I'm a very character driven person, so I need to like care about the characters, and I feel like I just did not care about the characters for this book, even though everything was adorable. Like I was here for the romance. I was, you know, kind of invested with how it would turn out, but at its core I was like, cool. All right, then this next book that I picked up is Uzumaki, which I gave 4 stars. This book was the first time I've ever read a horror manga by Junji Ito, and it was weird. It was definitely different than what I expected. I liked it. I thought it was done really well with like the artwork. It kept me super invested because I was wondering like what the fuck is going on half the time, and as the story just kept on going and going, I was like, how are they getting out of this? Because I am super curious. So this book basically follows a girl who is kind of like giving us like a flashback of like what happened that time in this small town, where people are just suddenly like falling ill. They're becoming obsessed with the spiral, and as they keep like, you know, like somehow it's like the air that they're inhaling or something, and the water that they're drinking is somehow perpetuating this like spiral illness. And so as the story progresses, like people are just starting to experience really weird things that to do with spirals. Like anything with spiral related is something to do with it. So whether or not it's like a cyclone like a spiral, or like the snail's back is like a spiral, that kind of situation, and it's how like super mesmerizing, all that stuff. And this book was just a really weird book, but I kind of liked it. Like it was different. Like it was never something I've never read before, and I love the artwork, I love the illustrations. The story itself, like I said, was also just super engaging, but I don't think it was like a 5-star read, unfortunately. So like I don't think I will like ever reread it, you know what I mean? So I was gonna say for that one, it was definitely an interesting experience though, because I've never read anything by him before, and I enjoyed it. I just don't know if it's something that I'm like I need to collect in the future. So there is one more that I think I want to read from him. I think it's called like Tomi or something, and it's about a girl, and that's all I really know. But yeah, like his illustrations are really stunning, like really beautiful, but eerie and scary. All right, then this last book that I picked up is Nevernight, which I gave 3 stars. I actually did a whole reading vlog on it, so I'll link that above and down below in case you want to check that out. But this book was honestly not the best. But so this book basically follows a girl called Mia, who at a very young age, her entire family was slaughtered. She used to be from like a very like rich family, like very high status kind of family, and her family are suddenly deemed as traitors, and they're completely killed off, wiped out. And somehow she ends up escaping, and she ends up running away to the Red Church, where they basically bring up and train assassins. And her goal right now is to get vengeance for her family's death. So as the story progresses, she is going through all the training sessions for it. She learns, she makes some friendships as well as some enemies. I don't know, I just feel like this book was just okay as well. My biggest issue was I just feel like I never really cared much for this book either. Like I didn't care about Mia, nor did I care about Mr. Kindly. Like I was just like, cool. The only thing I cared about was Trick, which, I mean, if you have read the series, you would know what happened to him at the end, which I was kind of like, what? And second of all, I did like the whole Eclipse and Mr. Kindly's interactions, but that didn't really happen to the second book. And that by that point I was like, I really don't care much for anything except for that anymore, and I just don't feel like reading an entire series where I'm trudging through that I'm not loving, except for like literally these 2 like darkling beasts, you know what I mean? Like, so unfortunately that book, that series was not for me. I definitely talked about a lot more in detail like as I was reading it, so I'll link that above and down below if you can check that out. But it was just not the series for me. Also the narrator did not do a good job. Like it was the most weirdest narration I've ever experienced before, and it was super jarring. I tried reading it physically as well, and I felt like it was just like I don't know, like it was a struggle, guys. So after I read this book, I did give God's Grave a try, and I got to like 100 pages I think, and then I was like, this is not for me, and then I just DNF'd the whole series altogether. But yeah, it was just not good. Anyways, that's all I'm gonna say for this wrap up. Let me know down below what you guys thought about any of these books. Have you read any of them before? What did you guys read for the month of November? But as always, if you like this video, please do give me a thumbs up. It really does help out my channel. And if you'd like to see more content of me, please don't hesitate to subscribe down below, as well as hit the notification bell. And as always, don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!